worked in my administration to protect. We got a number of great people here today. Obviously, we have the leaders of the legislature, Speaker Chris Sprowls, President Wilton Simpson. We have Senator Broder, Representatives Truenow, Hawkins. Is Josie Tomko here? I didn't see her. Yeah, I don't think she's here. I have Sean Hamilton, who's our interim DEP secretary. And then we've got a few folks who will introduce as they come up to speak. National Geographic Society, Nature Conservancy, Florida Wild, a bunch of stuff. Then we've got a lot of people here from the conservation community, ranchers, cattle, all kind of stuff. So I just want to welcome everybody and thank you for attending. We're here to highlight the state's effort to preserve our environment through land acquisition and conservation, and to ceremonially sign SB 976, which establishes the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act. We had planned on doing this in the later part of June, but the Surfside tragedy took me away from being able to do those sorts of things. So we wanted, though, to make sure that we highlighted this because we really do think it's a significant achievement. Protecting Florida's environment has been a top priority of my administration from the beginning. When I took office, we set an ambitious agenda to tackle Florida's water quality issues and have taken significant action to restore the Everglades and to protect our water resources. We've dedicated record funding to these efforts, expediting Everglades projects and prioritizing efforts to improve Florida's water quality, such as septic to sewer conversions. And additionally, we've pursued land conservation through the Florida Forever program. Florida Forever is the state's premier conservation and recreation lands acquisition program, which provides a host of ecosystem benefits, including water quality and quantity, outdoor recreation and habitat, and species protection. Since taking office, we've dedicated more than $200 million for the program. During the last 2 fiscal years, the state has acquired nearly 70,000 acres through the Florida Forever program, more than the previous 4 fiscal years combined. Land conservation is an essential tool for environmental protection, and the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act will further our already successful efforts. The Florida Wildlife Corridor Act is the culmination of a decade of efforts by many of the people here today, highlighting the importance of connected wildlife habitats and land preservation. The Florida Wildlife Corridor encompasses more than 18 million acres of land, 10 million of which are conservation lands. This act requires the Department of Environmental Protection to encourage and promote investment in and protection of the Florida Wildlife Corridor. Act also includes provisions to prevent critical fragmentation of wildlife habitats, including for the Florida panther, and maintaining wildlife access to habitats, protect the headwaters of major watersheds like where we stand right now, sustain working ranches, farms, and forests, and encourage investment in voluntary conservation easement agreements with private landowners, including working agricultural lands. To jumpstart our efforts to conserve lands within the Florida Wildlife Corridor, our budget allocates $300 million to the Department of Environmental Protection for land acquisitions and conservation easements to preserve and protect natural and working landscapes. The $300 million investment on top of the $100 million appropriation for the Florida Forever program provides Florida with the opportunity to increase progress towards protecting our lands for future generations. I want to thank everybody who's been involved with working hard to build this framework. I want to thank Senator Broder and Representative Truenow for sponsoring the legislation, and I also want to thank President Simpson and Speaker Sprowls for prioritizing this legislation in what was a very productive and busy legislative session. So we're going to work hard on this, and we really appreciate the opportunity. And with that, we'll hear from a few folks. So we'll first hear from our legislative leaders. So Speaker Chris Sprowls, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Governor. It's great to be with you, with President Simpson, with Senator Broder, and Representative Truenow to celebrate the signing of this bill, the wildlife corridors. What an exciting day for Florida, for wildlife, for the panther, for bears, for our wildlife connectivity habitats throughout the state of Florida. You know, I want to particularly thank President Simpson. And this was a passion project for the president. And I can tell you that passion was absolutely infectious throughout the legislature. And we were blessed to have great members like Senator Broder and Representative Trudeau who dug in, who did the hard work, who went and talked to members. And it's one of those great days in the legislature when you get to pass a bill like this that truly brings together all of Florida, brings together our cattle ranchers, our conservation community, Republicans and Democrats, people who are worried about the future of Florida and what Florida will look like for hundreds of years, or what it will look like for our children, for our grandchildren. What the governor has done here with the Wildlife Corridor Bill and signing it into law, the investments that the legislature did of $300 million will protect that future, protect the future of the panther, the bear, their habitat connectivity in the wildlife corridor, as well as the beautification of Florida and the protection of that for our children. Great to be here, Governor. Thank you for your great leadership. As I've said once before, and I'll say it again, we are blessed here in the state of Florida to have the most pro-environmental governor we've ever had in the history of our state, and that is borne out here today. Thank you.
Great. Senator Simpson.
And thank you, and thank you, Governor, for including us in on this signing. This is truly a great day. When you think about the wildlife corridor, there are 1,500 or so people moving here a day to the state of Florida. The sooner we can acquire this corridor, obviously the better. There will be many intrusions along the way, and we're very proud of the work that the House and the Senate did. The Speaker was a true champion of this project also, and we had a lot of good friends encouraging us along the way and giving us a path. But it's something that when you think about the water recharge, when you think about not only wildlife corridor, but water recharge, environmental sustainability, and the future of agriculture, when you think about all of this land, mostly conservation easements, hopefully, you'll have agriculture sustained on this property for well into the future, thousands of years. And we appreciate your leadership on the environment, Governor, and look forward to maybe having another good year this year. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Dr. Ian Miller.
Well, thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here on behalf of the National Geographic Society to join in this amazing celebration with all of you. I'd first like to begin by thanking Governor DeSantis and the Florida Legislature for passing the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act with bipartisan unanimous support. We know that driving positive change takes the tireless dedication of countless individuals who care about and want to protect the natural world. And this milestone underscores the power of working together towards a common cause. And that's why I'm here today, to recognize an incredible individual who has dedicated years to safeguarding wildlife and wild places, and who embodies our mission to illuminate and protect the wonder of the world. And that's National Geographic explorer and photographer Carlton Ward Jr. Carlton has been a driving force behind this effort, and at the National Geographic Society, we're grateful for his steadfast leadership. Since 2011, he's made it his mission to help create the Florida Wildlife Corridor to secure habitat for the area's iconic wildlife, including the Florida panther. We're immensely proud of him, and personally, it's an amazing honor and thrill to be here to see his long-awaited dream realized. These are the kinds of success stories that drive us at the National Geographic Society. For more than 130 years, we have driven impact and positive change by investing in explorers who define some of the critical challenges of our time. We drive new knowledge, advance new solutions, and inspire transformative change. Our explorers have helped establish protected areas in Gabon and raised awareness of the importance of the Okavango River Delta in southern Africa. They've helped protect wildlife on the brink, and they have helped establish 23 of the largest marine protected areas in the world, preserving millions of square miles of ocean. So Carlton is carrying this legacy forward with the preservation of this critical corridor. And it's really also part of a much bigger global commitment to protecting nature and preserving biodiversity. So congratulations, Carlton, and your entire team for all the important work which is helping change the world. Governor DeSantis, on behalf of the Society, we thank you for your leadership and your commitment to conservation. And the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act can be really a model for many, many other states. So in appreciation, we would like to present you with a photo, which you saw a few minutes ago, of Florida panthers in the wild that Carlton took and is actually in the National Geographic magazine article article from 2021, the April issue from 2021. So we at the National Geographic are proud to provide a platform to share and celebrate this important moment. Thank you very much.
All right. Carlton Ward.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis. Thank you, Dr. Miller, for those very generous introductions. When I look out across this group, I see, it gets emotional for me, a bunch of personal heroes. You are the people who hold this state together. I see the cowboy hats out here, the generational ranchers who, without your commitment to your, gosh, I can't get through this. How do you guys do this all the time? Without your commitment to your land, to your legacy, we wouldn't have this chance. I look at the conservation organizations gathered here, Friends of the Nature Conservancy, the Florida Wildlife Corridor Coalition, Conservation Florida, Audubon Florida is probably represented. So many important partners whose hard work every single day is what gives this a chance. And we're building this framework on your backs, on your shoulders. It was almost 10 years ago that I stood in this same place with Mallory Lykes-Dimmitt and Joe Guthrie, fellow explorers, fellow potentially crazy people, because we were at the halfway point of a 100-day, 1,000-mile expedition. We began in Everglades National Park, and on day 50, we arrived here at the Nature Conservancy's Disney Wilderness Preserve. This is 2012. And we were out there to prove by our expedition that we still had a connected corridor in Florida that we could all work together to save into the future. I learned so much from that journey. And one point was that 50 days in, we were still in the Everglades watershed. We hiked, paddled, and trekked for 50 days without hardly leaving the Everglades watershed. And this is a Western scale conservation opportunity hidden here in the eastern United States. We have the edge of Orlando, and then we have an amazing, relatively unbroken, connected corridor of ranch lands and public lands that goes all the way to Lake Okeechobee and beyond. So I'm tremendously thankful for the partnership and the legacy. I'm very thankful for you, Governor DeSantis, and your leadership, for Representative Trunow, for Senator Broder for sponsoring this legislation, for Speaker Sprouse and Senator Simpson for your leadership in not just supporting the legislation, but making the investment that's going to protect up to 100,000 acres of this land this year. It's really, really remarkable. I also thank the agencies, Secretary Hamilton, Secretary Kevin Tebow from DOT, Director Eric Sutton from FWC. We all work together, and this is a common ground approach that represents the interest of all these different groups, and it's such a tremendous honor. Florida, as we've heard, is been leading the country in land conservation through programs like Florida Forever, and through this Florida Wildlife Corridor Act, through this framework. We will be the national and global example of what's possible for nature and economies together. So I thank you for our state. I thank you for our country. I thank you personally, because as a father of a 3, 5, and 7-year-old, I know that they're going to have a chance to inherit a Florida that is every bit as remarkable as we're enjoying today. Thank you very much.
Great. Good job.
Okay, Temperance Morgan.
Good morning, and welcome to the Nature Conservancy's Disney Wilderness Preserve. I'm Temperance Morgan. I'm the Executive Director of the Nature Conservancy here in my home state of Florida, and it is truly a pleasure to be here with you this morning. And I have to thank Carlton. I'm usually the one who cries, so I appreciate you taking that responsibility for me today. I'm going to try to keep it together over here. We are really happy to be here to celebrate the passage of the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act. Just a tremendous, tremendous win for conservation. And when you partner that with the $400 million we have in the state budget this year for the acquisition of rare and sensitive lands, it is just a truly truly a remarkable year from a legislative standpoint. So we want to thank the governor and the legislature for their leadership and for their dedication to the passage of this act, which will have a historic impact on protection in the state of Florida. And an act like this will not only have tremendous benefits to our natural systems and to the iconic species in Florida that rely on landscapes like these for their survival and to thrive, like the Florida panther, but it will also have benefits for our communities, for all of us who enjoy spending time out in nature, for our state's ability to adapt to a changing climate, and for our economy. So today is certainly a day to celebrate. We recognize that land protection is a collaborative effort. It takes, and you've heard that from others this morning, it takes many to make this happen, from landowners, ranchers, the environmental community, government all coming together to identify these critical lands and ensure they're protected for the future. And Disney Wilderness Preserve, this 11,500 acres that we stand in today, is a perfect example. You can look around you today and see conservation in practice. So this property was a working ranch. It has now been protected and restored. It's the headwaters of the Greater Everglades ecosystem, and it can help provide benefits throughout the Everglades ecosystem all the way down to Biscayne Bay. And we're really proud of that. The Nature Conservancy has worked in Florida for 60 years. This is our 60-year anniversary. We've been working hard on land conservation over these years, and we know the importance of funding and bills like the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act to make all of this possible for both our environment as well as for our people. So again, I just want to thank the leadership, the governor, Senator Simpson, Senator Broder, and others who moved this bill forward, and we thank you for all joining us today.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Broder.
Thank you very much, Governor DeSantis. I just want to thank the governor. I want to thank President Simpson. I want to thank Speaker Sprouse for their vision and their leadership to make us one of the most conservation-friendly places in America. Really, it's been said before, but this is really a model going forward that a lot of other states should be able to replicate if they have partners like we have. And that's been a very, very lucky thing. We know and we heard how many people a day are moving into the state, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on our heartland, which is the sensitive area that we need to protect. But we have seen in other areas where a public-private partnership works. We saw it in infrastructure. We saw it in construction. We see it in building educational buildings. This is really one of the first stated public-private partnerships in the environment and in conservation that I think can be a model for the rest of the country. And it takes work. Thank you to all the farmers and the ranchers that are here. Thank you to all the environmentalists. Thank you to the agencies in the state government. And thank you to my fellow legislators for having the vision and the confidence that we can all work together to provide a first-in-the-nation model. So as the sponsor of the bill, thank you very much, Governor. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you all for all of your work to make this one of the best things I think I've ever done in the legislature. So thank you.
Good. All right. Representative Truenow.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, President Simpson and Speaker Sprouse, and all the folks that were instrumental in putting all this together. I think that, as a freshman this year coming up to have a bill this unique and this monumental is a humbling, honoring situation. And I look forward to fulfilling the objectives and the things that are needed to promote green spaces in our state, and thankful for the support moving forward and the direction that we're taking. So thank you again. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Good job. All right. Well, we will do this. I think I actually signed it late at night. We were going back and forth to Surfside. We had all these bills due, and obviously we had planned on dealing with those in a normal, timely fashion, but we had to knock it all out. And so this is a little bit more ceremonial, obviously, which it deserves. And I'm going to sign it the day that I actually sign it. All right, there we go. All right, so there you go.
Thank you, sir.
Browns.
Thank you. Yeah.
One more. Very good. Okay, well, good job. Well, we appreciate everybody's hard work. We think we've got a lot of momentum on a lot of different issues in regards to conservation and obviously water resources, water quality. Just wanted to say a couple things about some unrelated topics. One is, as many of you know, last week I called on President Biden to assist the people of Cuba with restoring internet connectivity in the island. Once these demonstrations started, the regime, I think understandably, recognized that for what it was. It was really a mortal threat to its existence because these folks were protesting the existence of the regime in Havana. And so they went to crack down on connectivity and shut down the internet. That obviously made it much more difficult for Cubans who are seeking freedom to converse with one another. And then it was much more difficult to beam the images of what was going on to the outside world. So we in the United States have the capability to help provide the connectivity that I think would be essential in exposing the truth and really holding the regime accountable. We have not yet received a response to the letter I wrote last week. And so we think that time is of the essence. We would like to see, obviously, a response, but we'd like to see a positive response. We think it would make a big difference given the situation that's going on down there. I'd also like to just report Senator Simpson came with me on Saturday to the southern border. As many of you know, the governor of Texas had asked in June for support from other states, given the unprecedented influx that we're seeing on the southern border. The state of Florida had National Guards last year on a year deployment. That'll be ending in October, and that'll be re-upped. That's a federal mission. This was basically mutual aid from states, and I knew, having spoken with a lot of folks throughout the state of Florida, particularly our rural sheriffs, just how much the methamphetamine influx from the border is affecting these rural communities in particular. And sure enough, you're seeing unprecedented amounts of narcotics being brought across the border. So we knew that going in. We also knew that unfortunately there would be a lot of criminal aliens that would be coming across the border, some apprehended and released by the Biden administration, some not apprehended because they're not going to be able to catch, the state of Texas can't catch every single person. And sure enough, that's been a big problem. But the thing that I think, having been there, that I was most surprised about is we sent about 50 law enforcement, state law enforcement personnel. They've made over 2,000 apprehensions, over 100 felony arrests. And they say that almost 70% of everybody that they have interdicted said their ultimate destination was the state of Florida. So if you think that having wide open border, 1,000 miles, 15, however far it was away, doesn't affect here, you're wrong. And these folks are telling us, and these are not just people coming from Mexico, Mexican citizens. They've cataloged over 100 different countries of people that are coming through. So I think the word is out that the U.S. isn't going to defend its border. People are flooding in to try to get in. Obviously the narcotics, obviously the criminal activity and the criminal aliens, but just the sheer number of people, if you have a huge percentage that are going to try to come to Florida, and I think Biden is paying for tickets on buses and flying folks around, that's going to have a huge impact on community services, on education, on healthcare. It's going to affect taxpayers to a huge, huge extent. So the policy there needs to change. They need to reinstitute the Remain in Mexico policy. They need to stop inviting so many folks coming in from all over the world, really, illegally. That's not good policy. And I think if they just restored the pre-January 20th policies, I think it would turn around very quickly. That said, this is absolutely something that's going to affect communities throughout the country. And alarmingly,
Florida may be one of, if not the most affected state, given how these migrants, the illegal migrants, were reporting to our guys. Now, our guys are in the Del Rio sector. That's different from McAllen and Brownsville and some of those areas. There is more narcotics going through the McAllen than there is in the Del Rio. The Del Rio seem to have a lot of people coming who were not from Mexico originally. They're from all these other countries. So our guys are doing a good job. It's an important mission. I think they've had a positive impact, but the scale of the problem is so enormous. And having been there and seen it, you see it just being wide open. And so you can't have, Texas is going to end up hitting 1 million illegal border crossers just in Texas very soon, by the end of the fiscal year for sure. But really, you didn't see it ramp up till actually after January 20th. So I bet you the calendar year of 2021 will be probably the biggest on record by a long shot. So it's a really, really significant issue. So we're calling on Joe Biden to help the people of Cuba, and then we're calling on Joe Biden to secure this border and protect the American people. And with that, I'll take a few questions. So we've been engaged in this from the beginning. We did a roundtable in June. We brought the scientists together. They were explaining what we were looking at and then what the state is able to do in response. So we put millions of dollars to work down there to assist with mitigation, and we'll continue to do that. One of the things I did when I became governor was I reinstituted the Red Tide Task Force, which had been dormant for 15 years. We also put money into the Center for Red Tide Research and through Moat Marine additional ways to develop innovative technologies. And we actually created a separate fund to be able to respond in real time to things like blue-green algae and red tide. And so we have that pot of money. We're using it, and we're helping it, both Pinellas and Hillsborough counties as it needs, and we're going to continue to do that. Obviously, red tide is naturally occurring, but if you have fish or some of that and you clean it up quicker, I think a lot of the scientists believe that prevents the red tide from getting worse, or at least mitigates. So we definitely want to do that, and we'll continue to do it. Eric Sutton, the head of Florida Fish and Wildlife, is there on the ground today, and then Sean Hamilton, our DEP secretary, will be there tomorrow. Sean, do you want to add anything to what I said?
Sure.
Go ahead.
One of the things I just want to add is there's a lot of direct coordination that's happening with those who are on the front lines, and we'll continue to do that. I think it's important to make sure they know that they have a connection to the highest level of the department, to make sure there are no unanswered questions. And I think to the governor's point, we've been involved since day one, securing funding avenues, and we'll continue to do that. I'll head down there this week, and you should expect a heavy presence to make sure the coordination continues and make sure they understand that we're there for them today and tomorrow. So that's the only thing.
Yeah, and I told them, I said, look, we got this fund since I've been use it. I mean, this is why we need it. If we have a algae bloom in Lake Okeechobee, we've sent people there to help to mitigate that. If you have a red tide, whatever you can do to mitigate, in this case, the cleanup is probably the most effective thing. Use it. And so I told Sean, put all hands on deck. The fishermen, they go out there. I mean, it's brutal, especially how intense it is in some of those areas. And then it has obviously impact on local economy and all that stuff. And so I think it's absolutely something that this is why we got that money in the first place, because we want to be able to respond with full force. And so we're doing that. Sean's been working with the locals in both counties, primarily Pinellas, and he's going to be back on the ground. I told those guys, maintain a continuous presence down there. Unfortunately, this thing doesn't just leave, so we're going to have to deal with this. And so just be prepared to do that and make sure that we're sending the funding where we need to go.
Governor, Florida's leading the state right now, is one of the states leading with COVID-19 cases. The majority are unvaccinated. So how are you and state health officials encouraging people to go get vaccinated?
Well, I think it's important. Your question raised an important point in terms of what we've seen in the last really couple months. Obviously, in July, which I told people months ago, we would see higher prevalence because it's a seasonal virus, and this is the seasonal pattern that it follows in the Sun Belt states, particularly in Florida. If you are vaccinated, though, the number of people that end up hospitalized after is almost zero. It's incredibly low. So I think there's some misinformation out there where someone will say, oh, these people were vaccinated, then they tested positive. Understand, a positive test is not a clinical diagnosis of illness. And so if you're vaccinated and you test positive but you don't get sick, well, the name of the game is to keep people out of the hospital. And I think that the folks that have done that, and we're proud of our Seniors First strategy, we've done about 85% of our seniors in Florida have gotten shots. You know, I think the data is increasingly clear that if you have been vaccinated or if you've recovered from COVID, because you are immune in that respect too, the chance of you being hospitalized or dying is very low. And so I think you're seeing that in other parts of the world and other parts of the country too, where you see positive tests going up. But like in the United Kingdom, for example, they have huge increase in positive tests, but their hospital census and mortality is not following suit. I mean, it may go up a little, but it is not surging like it would have over a year ago. And so I think that we have 3 vaccines available. Anyone, any adult can get it at pharmacies, health departments, you name it. Very easy to get, very quick process, and that's available. We also, you know, if somebody ends up hospitalized, we have much better treatments, such as some of the drips that you can do compared to where we were last summer. Last summer, the number one thing we were sending was this remdesivir. I mean, honestly, I don't think remdesivir ended up being helpful. At least there's not a lot of data to support it. I do think the data for somebody that gets infected, particularly if you're in a high-risk group, for getting one of these monoclonal antibodies, I think the data has been very positive on that. And so, obviously, the best way is to get the protection beforehand. But if you do find yourself infected, you know, please consult your doctor, especially if you're in a higher risk age group, because there are much more effective ways to mitigate the impact. And I just close by saying, you know, because I said this a couple months ago, you know, these things have a pattern. We saw the pattern last summer. It's similar. I think it started a little later. And so people should just be prepared for that. And as we get into the next month, the August and stuff, I think you'll start to see it go in a different direction. But that's just the way this thing is done. It's had a pretty consistent life cycle. And there's certain parts of the country that have certain seasonal. And so this is it. But the folks that are out there, 75% of Floridians over the age of 50 have gotten shots. And so we think that that's really positive. But I also think that we have to be careful in terms of some of the messaging for folks that may be skeptical about the vaccine. I do not agree with some of these people, some of these quote-unquote experts who lambaste people and criticize them or say they're stupid or something. That's not the way to reach folks, okay? So that's one of the reasons why I always said no mandates. Because I think, honestly, I don't believe in mandates, but I don't even think it would be productive to do that. And so the folks who wanted it, the seniors, we worked hard to get it. Everyone who's wanted it obviously can get it. Now you're in a situation where you have folks who may be skeptical of it. And so understand, if you're communicating, you don't want to say things that are going to cause them to retreat even further. And I'm sorry, there's been a lot of misinformation and a lot of bad advice that's been given by some of these experts over the last year. These people saw all that. They remember all this stuff. So I would say just, you know, have a little humility when you're trying to carry that message. You know, understand that there's some people that may have qualms. And what I try to do is just present the data. And if I thought the data didn't justify, then I would say that, and I would be completely honest. But I think us going in doing Seniors First like we did, I absolutely believe that saved lives. I think it saved thousands of lives. Had we not done that, there would have been more seniors exposed, and even some of the seniors that did get infected, I think their illness would have been much more severe than it was because they had that protection. So I think the benefits have been clear, you know, in the state of Florida for those who have done it.
Governor, you said mandates are not necessary.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. What's your take on the judge ruling CDC guidelines?
So as many of you know, we sued the CDC to, because they had shut down the cruise industry for over a year. They said it was going to be 2 weeks last March. I was down in Port Everglades with Mike Pence and the CDC director. It was supposed to be a temporary thing so that we could kind of make sure people had supplies and all this other stuff. And it turned into an indefinite shutdown of a very important industry that affects a lot of people. So we sued. We won in the district court and won resoundingly. The CDC wants to appeal that, and so they asked the district judge to stay his ruling. He declined to do that. They asked the 11th Circuit to stay the ruling. So the 11th Circuit didn't rule against us. They just said that the ruling can be stayed. It was a 2-to-1 vote. And honestly, I mean, these panels are what they are. So we are absolutely going to pursue to get the stay removed, either at the full 11th Circuit or at the U.S. Supreme Court. I think probably to the full 11th Circuit en banc. We'll probably try to do that because right now they're going to be in a similar spot until November. And I think that most courts at this point have had their limit with the CDC issuing these dictates without a firm statutory basis. So I'm confident that we'd win on the merits at the full 11th Circuit. And honestly, I'm confident we'd win at the U.S. Supreme Court. They just basically said that 5 justices effectively said that the moratorium on evictions exceeded CDC's authority. And I think you'd end up seeing this here. But I think it raised, one of the reasons why we did it was not, it's an important industry for our state. We're committed to that. But it raises a bigger question. Can you just have one agency in the government without Congress ever passing a law, just basically shutting down an industry? Maybe you don't care about the cruise industry, but next time it might be your industry. Next time it may affect people that you know or people that depend on this for their livelihood. So I think it raises a lot of important implications. Obviously, we want to get the cruises back. If you look, we gained 69,000 private sector jobs in June in Florida, and that's without having these cruise ships. I mean, so just imagine what we would do then. And then imagine what will happen if we get international travel back. I have to say, I was a little bit perturbed when I was at the southern border when I started thinking about if you wanted to fly from Brazil or you wanted to do certain travel, the way you would be treated by the federal government under the auspices of COVID mitigation. Some people wouldn't even be allowed to come. A lot of these flights aren't even allowed. If you wanted to go on a cruise ship, the federal government doesn't want you except under extreme circumstances. So they're very, very rigorous with kind of lawful commercial activity and travel. But if you just want to hopscotch across that border, they don't care about COVID. They're letting you straight in, they're throwing you on a bus, and they're sending you all over the fruited plain in this country. So I don't understand how you square that. If you're saying the cruises have to go through all these procedures because of COVID, wouldn't you want people coming from 100 different countries to just not be able to pour into the country effectively with very little pushback? So I think it's a huge, huge problem. And the idea that we would treat American citizens and their right to travel with more disfavor than we're treating foreign nationals illegally entering our country. I don't think that didn't sit well with me, and I was really frustrated to see that. Okay, well, we will be back soon. Thanks, everybody.
Wasn't that refreshing to actually hear a real leader speak? I haven't heard a real leader speak like this since Reagan. I'll be very honest with you. Detail-oriented, fact-oriented, no emotion, not hogging the spotlight, not making it all about him. And conservation led off this live. See, they've tried to convert conservation into environmentalism, and the left has tried to own it. In one fell swoop in Florida, we just took that entire issue away from the leftists. The governor, the Republican governor of Florida, just got a ringing endorsement from Nat Geo. That's how good a job he's done. And in this particular presser, he covered pretty much all of the major issues and did it quickly, concisely, with facts, in a way that I just have not seen another leader do. And he made a great point about what's going on in Texas. 2,000 apprehensions, over 100 felony arrests. When asked, 3/4 of those 2,000 were heading for Florida. We're heading for Florida. Now, we've talked before about that issue in Surfside, and I've got to be careful what I say here. A whole lot of you have gone over to Patreon and saw the real story. Now, does it make sense? He said there are people down there from over 100 countries. Does it make sense now how a sleeper cell from Hezbollah could have gotten in to Florida to bring that building down? He just said 3/4 of the people they are apprehending at the border in Texas, when asked, said their primary destination was Florida. Wouldn't be hard. 2, 3, 4 guys. See, this is what people aren't seeing here. This image I'm showing you is from a presser that was done last week between Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis. See, I did a video a couple weeks ago. This is an alliance DC is terrified of because of the amount of resources and the amount of people that are represented between Florida and Texas alone. 35 million there, 22 million, and climbing astronomically every day here. We are pushing, 60 million people? 1 in 5 people in the United States live in either Florida or Texas. 1 in 5. And then when you add up all of our allies, South Carolina, we'll leave Georgia out for a minute, but Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and you add in all those people, this is a huge shift in power. Things can be done and things can get gotten done, pardon my vernacular there, without DC. Governor DeSantis doesn't need to become the President of the United States to get things done. The states don't need DC to get things done. DC and New York are the greatest damnation this planet has ever seen, bar none. I'd rather have the Roman Empire. I'd rather have the King of England at this point. They need to go away. And this is how you do it. And it's in our Constitution. And they don't have the ability to rewrite it. They love to think they do, but they don't. It's in our Constitution that we are guaranteed, Article 4, Section 4, states' rights to be governed at the state level. Governed. See, the first 7 letters in president is preside. One who presides doesn't govern. Presiding over something isn't governing something. So I've been trying to kind of look out of the corner of my eye and see your guys' comments here. I can't really see it with the screen I'm looking at right now, but generally speaking, this press conference covered all the major topics. Cuba, the border, the issue with the CDC. Judge Meriday, about a month ago, overruled the CDC and made their orders of none effect. There was a panel, it wasn't really a ruling, up in the 11th Circuit in Atlanta that said that Judge Meriday's ruling could be stayed, but it's not an official ruling. It's going to go before the entire court, and they're going to lose there, meaning CDC is going to lose there. And even if it got appealed up to the Supreme Court's going to knock them out of the park, because the Supreme Court already said that the CDC can't issue eviction moratoriums like they tried to do. So this is the reality, because Florida fought back. DC wilted. The little man behind the curtain, not the great and powerful Oz, the little man behind the curtain, wilted. If it were up to me, some doddering old geriatric beta idiot would be in that seat for now into the foreseeable future, so that the states could elect powerful leaders and govern themselves. So, well, Florida outdoorsman was the first two things out of your mouth that have nothing to do with what's being talked about. Very clear. Very clear. You chose the two negative things that have nothing to do with this particular conference. So, anyway, but we'll leave it there. I'm not going to get into an argument. I mean, there's people out there that call themselves conservatives and Republicans that just don't like Governor DeSantis because they see that he's actually a better choice than Trump. He's a better governor. He's a better leader. He's far better equipped to lead, whether at the state level or any other level, than that guy was. And this is what they don't like, so they start digging up negative shit. They try to think of the most negative thing they can find. They don't accentuate the positive. They don't get behind the governor. They really hate the fact that out at the Western Political Action Summit, Conservative Political Action Summit, he actually beat Trump in a straw poll. He actually beat Trump in a straw poll. So believe me, the conservatives need to do this. They need to start looking around, and they need to start seeing the little Antifa people. They need to start seeing the little Antifa types that are within their midst, that want to push anarchy, that want to push the end of the world, that want to continue to worship a guy. Isn't that great? I mean, how this started. The press conference, he makes a statement, and then he brings up people, and then he brings up other people, and he brings up other people. And he shows conservatism across the board in Florida, and a unanimous and united front for our state. First, almost half of the press conference was the governor introducing other people. You think Trump would ever do that? Hell no. Hell no, it'd be all about him. And of course, there'd be a giant fundraising push at the end. He does. The man has class. He has a demeanor. He has a countenance meant for leadership. And exactly, doesn't pat himself on the back every 2 seconds. But he's still tough. No nonsense, equipped with the facts, knows what he's talking about. This is what conservatism was supposed to be. Not all pushed around by emotions. Making people adhere to the rule of law. Get right or get out. That should be, I tell you what, I thought of a lot of different slogans for, a license plate for Florida. That would be a good one. Get right or get out. Because that's where we're going. People have said, what if something would happen to Governor DeSantis? Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nunez, Hispanic female. You think our governor is conservative? Wait until she would take the reins. Wait until she would take the reins. She's even more conservative than he is. Our state house, 2-1. 2-1 conservatives to liberals. 2-1 in the Florida State House. The Senate, 24-16, which is basically 60-40. Supermajority in the Senate, 2-1 majority in the House, and not a single liberal, not even a middle of the road conservative. The entire population of the Florida Supreme Court are members of the Federalist Society. They are way to the right. So he's not an aberration. He's not. The reason, I honestly believe, the reason he had a close election with Gillum was because people thought maybe he was a rhino, like Christ. They thought maybe he was a rhino like Scott. But now, he could be elected governor for the rest of his life if the Florida law would allow it. I have absolutely no doubt in that whatsoever. FROF, Free Republic of Florida, absolutely. So, anyway, I know we got a little bit of an early start today, but I just wanted to get this covered, get this out of the way. With everything that happened down in South Florida, a lot of the governor's events had to be pushed back. So, of course, today was an honorary signing, but still very, very important. Because when you can disarm the DC leftists in your state, and that's exactly what this was. This is a disarming event. There's nothing even Nikki Fried is going to be able to say about this. Nothing at all. Because it was a unanimous vote in our legislature for this Florida Wildlife Act, the Conservation Act. So I hope Governor Abbott gets his act together and learns something, daughter of the beloved. And as far as somebody mentioned something about California here, of California either fix their state or leave. See, the people leaving California to come to Florida, they're not liberals. If they were liberals, they'd stay. They'd be like, oh, great, we have Democrats in charge of everything, everywhere, all the time. It's super fantastic. I love living in California, and they stay. But for conservatives and intelligent people, they're like, enough's enough. I'm out. I'm going someplace else that agrees with my values. So conservatives are leaving those states, and this is perfect. Go where you are celebrated, not where you're tolerated. And as more conservatives come into Florida, bringing their money, bringing their conservative values, bringing their actual real jobs, that pushes out the leftists. Because things get expensive. Prices go up, and they like crap for free. Who out there doesn't believe that leftists think everything should be free? Who out there doesn't think that? See, things aren't free in Florida. You got to pay for them. You got to get a job. You got to work your ass off. I work every day. I work literally every day, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity to work here every day and live here. So, goodbye, leftists in Florida. We'll still have some Democrats, but they'll be conservative, and they'll be states' rights Democrats. I know that sounds like some type of an oxymoron, but it's really not. There used to be a great many of them. The South was full of them. When I was growing up in the 1980s and 1990s, there were a lot of good conservative states' rights Democrats. They have largely been pushed out of government at the national level because of the hyper leftism of the West Coast, but that's changing. That is changing. So, anyway, I'm trying to... Dixiecrats, exactly right. They were good people. They were good people. Because there were... And we're seeing it now. We call them rhinos. Really what they are is just the last vestiges of what they called liberal Republicans. See, at one time, there were both liberals and conservatives in both parties. There were good, conservative, God-fearing Christian Democrats and good, God-fearing Christian Republicans. But there were also atheistic, secular, progressive Democrats and atheistic, progressive, secular Republicans. And that's what we're seeing, what we call rhinos. So this is the real divider here. Conservatism is now governing Florida. Conservatism is governing Florida. Party affiliation and national governance is going away. The idea of everything happened to America is going away. So, anyway, 53 minutes. I will leave it there, let you guys get on with your day. But just understand, you rewatch this. This is how you lead. This is exactly how you lead. This man is going to go down in the same context in history as Ronald Reagan. You mark my words, perhaps better. God bless, and we will see you guys later.